The stars looked cold and empty around the small planet called Kepler 442b. Far from the busy space lanes where big ships carried goods between worlds, this little planet sat alone in the dark. On its surface, strange blue trees grew tall and purple grass moved in the gentle wind. The air smelled sweet, like flowers after rain. Elder Vostai stood on the high wall of the main city. His skin was pale green and his large eyes could see far into the distance. He was old even for his people called the Althari. Deep lines marked his face, telling stories of many hard years. Today he looked worried as he watched the sky. The Althari had lived on this world for 20 years now. They came here running from enemies who wanted to hurt them. Other worlds had turned them away or tried to make them slaves. But here, far from everyone else, they had found peace. They built cities under the ground and learned to grow food in the strange soil. They were happy, but peace never lasts forever. Captain Hyunwoo Park sat in the captain's chair of his ship, the Meridian. The ship was not big or strong like a warship. It was made for exploring new worlds and finding new things in space. Hyunwoo was young for a captain, only 32 years old. His dark hair was always messy, and he had kind eyes that missed nothing. The Meridian flew slowly through space, taking pictures of stars and checking for signs of life. It was quiet work, but Hyunwoo liked it. Every day brought something new to see or learn. "Captain," said Lieutenant Dayun Kim from her seat at the communications desk. She was small and quick, with fingers that danced over her controls like she was playing music. "I'm getting something strange on the old emergency channel." Hyunwoo turned to look at her. "What kind of strange?" Dayun put her hand to her ear, listening hard to the sounds coming through her headset. Her face looked confused. "It's very weak, sir, and it's using a frequency that nobody has used for years. But I think someone is asking for help." The bridge of the Meridian became very quiet. The only sounds were the soft hum of the ship's engines and the beeping of computers. Hyunwoo felt his heart beat faster. In all the years humans had been flying between the stars, they had found many worlds with life. But most of the time, those worlds did not want to talk to them. "Can you make it clearer?" Hyunwoo asked. Dayun worked at her controls, her face tight with concentration. Static filled the air, loud and annoying. Then slowly, a voice came through. It was high and musical, but full of fear. "Please, if anyone can hear this, we need help. They are coming. They will kill us all. We have nowhere else to go. Please, someone help us." The voice broke up into static again. Dayun kept working, trying to bring it back. When she did, the voice was crying. "We are the Althari of Kepler 442b. The Kethmoran Empire comes to destroy us. We have sent this message for 3 days. No one answers. We think no one will come." Hyunwoo stood up fast, his chair spinning behind him. "How far away is that planet?" His navigation officer, a calm man named Junho Lee, checked his computers. 2 days at maximum speed, Captain. The Kethmorans? Hyunwoo had heard that name before. Everyone in space knew to fear the Kethmoran Empire. They were big, strong, and mean. They took what they wanted and killed anyone who got in their way. Their ships were black and covered in weapons. People called them the Iron Fleet. Dayun kept listening to the signal. "Captain, there's more. The voice says the Kethmoran fleet will reach their world in 6 days. They're asking for anyone to help them evacuate." "Evacuate to where?" asked Junho. "If they're on the edge of known space, there's nowhere for them to go." The bridge fell quiet again. Everyone knew what that meant. The Althari would die. Hyunwoo walked to the big window at the front of the bridge. Stars stretched out in all directions, tiny points of light in the endless dark. Somewhere out there, people were going to die and no one was coming to help them. He thought about his orders from Earth Command. The Meridian was supposed to map star systems and look for new resources. They were not supposed to get involved in conflicts between alien species. Earth had enemies enough without making new ones. But he also thought about his father, who had taught him that good people help when they can. And his mother, who always said that doing the right thing was more important than doing the easy thing. "Sir?" Dayun's voice was soft. Should I try to answer them?" Hyunwoo looked at his crew. Dayun at communications, young and hopeful. Junho at navigation, steady and reliable. Chief Engineer Boram Yoon, who could fix anything with her hands and her brain. Security Chief Taemin Young, who never backed down from a fight. Medical Officer So Young Lim, who cared for everyone like they were her family. These were good people. The best people. And they were looking at him, waiting for him to decide. "Captain," said Taemin, his voice hard like iron, One ship cannot fight a Kethmoran fleet. I know, said Hyunwoo, but we can't just leave them. Boram spoke up from her engineering station. The Meridian has good shields and fast engines. We could get to the planet, help with evacuations maybe. Evacuate to where? Junho asked again. We'll figure that out when we get there, Hyunwoo said. He made his choice. Daeun, send a message back to the Althari. Tell them Earthship Meridian is coming to help. Tell them to hold on. Daeun's fingers moved quickly over her controls. She sent the message, then looked up at her captain. Message sent, sir, and I'm sending their coordinates and the information about the Kethmoran threat back to Earth Command too. Hyunwoo nodded. Maybe Earth would send help. Maybe they wouldn't, but at least people would know what was happening. Junho, set course for Kepler 442b. Maximum speed. Course set. Captain, all ahead full. The Meridian turned in space, its engines burning bright blue. It accelerated toward a distant world where people were dying, and no one was coming to help them. Except now someone was. As the ship flew through hyperspace, Hyunwoo sat in his chair and thought about what they were flying into. One small Earth ship against the entire Kethmoran fleet. It should have been terrifying. It should have been impossible. But somehow it felt right. In his message to Earth Command, he had written simple words. Innocents will die. We are all that stands between them and extinction. Meridian is proceeding to render assistance. He didn't know if anyone on Earth would listen. He didn't know if anyone would care about a species they had never heard of on a world they had never seen. But Hyunwoo Park knew one thing for certain. When the Althari had cried for help and when no one else had answered, humans had come. That had to count for something. The message from Captain Park reached Earth 18 hours later. It came through the quantum communication network that connected all human worlds, traveling faster than any ship could fly. The signal arrived at the big white building in Geneva, where Earth's military leaders worked. Fleet Admiral Jin Ho Lee was drinking his morning coffee when the message came to his desk. He was an older man with gray hair and eyes that had seen many battles. His uniform was covered with medals, but his face looked tired. Being the leader of Earth's Space Navy was not an easy job. He read the message twice, then called for his staff to meet him right away. The war room was a big circular space with screens showing star maps and ship positions. Admiral Lee sat at the center while his officers took their seats around him. The room felt tense like the air before a storm. Ladies and gentlemen, Admiral Lee said, we have received a request for military assistance from Captain Park of the survey vessel Meridian. He reports that an unknown species called the Althari is under attack by the Kethmoran Empire. Chief Strategy Officer Soo Bin Choi was a small woman with sharp eyes and a quick mind. She pulled up information on her computer screen. The Kethmorans, sir? They control 12 star systems and have a fleet of over 300 warships. They're not people we want to fight. What do we know about these Althari? Asked Admiral Lee. Dr. Min-Soo Yang, Earth's top expert on alien life, stood up. He was young for such an important job, but everyone respected his knowledge. Very little, sir. But if they're calling for help on an old emergency frequency, they must be desperate. Most peaceful species know about those channels from the old galactic treaties. Admiral Lee looked around the room. Opinions? General Kyung-Soo Park, who commanded Earth's ground forces, spoke first. Sir, we have no treaty with these Althari. We don't even know if they're friendly. Getting involved could start a war with the Kethmorans. The captain disobeyed direct orders, said Colonel Se-Ron Yoon from Intelligence. Survey ships are not supposed to involve themselves in alien conflicts. Subin brought up a star map on the main screen. Kepler 442b is far from our territory. Even if we wanted to help, it would take our fastest ships 4 days to get there. The Kethmorans will arrive in 6 days, Admiral Lee said quietly. That gives us 2 days to make a difference. Dr. Yang stepped forward. Sir, may I speak? Admiral Lee nodded. I've been studying Captain Park's report about the Althari transmission. The way they asked for help, the language they used. These sound like a peaceful people. They mentioned evacuation, not fighting back. They're not warriors, so? Asked General Park. So, Dr. Yang said, his voice getting stronger. That makes them exactly the kind of people we should help. When was the last time you heard of the Kethmorans attacking military targets? They pick on the weak. They enslave peaceful species or wipe them out completely. The room was quiet. Everyone knew Dr. Yang was right. The Kethmoran Empire was like a bully who only picked fights they could win. Admiral Lee thought about his own family. His grandfather had told him stories about the old wars on Earth, when bad people hurt innocent civilians and nobody came to help. Those stories had shaped who he was. "Sir," said a new voice from the doorway. Captain Heejin Nam walked into the room. She was the commander of the Earth Navy's newest and most powerful ship, the Dreadnought Indomitable. She was young for a captain, but everyone knew she was brilliant. "I volunteered to lead a relief fleet." Admiral Lee looked at her with surprise. "Captain Nam, you weren't invited to this meeting." "No, sir, but I heard about the situation. The Indomitable can be ready to leave in 6 hours. Give me a fleet and I'll make sure the Kethmorans regret threatening innocent people." General Park shook his head. "Captain, the Kethmoran fleet will have 50 ships or more. Even our best vessels would be outnumbered." "Numbers aren't everything," Captain Nam said with a small smile. "Humans are good at winning fights we're supposed to lose." Subin looked at her computer again. "If we sent a fleet, what ships could we use?" "The Third Fleet is conducting exercises near Tau Ceti," said Admiral Lee. 40 ships, including 3 dreadnoughts and 6 carriers. Add the ships from the Home Guard and we could field maybe 60 vessels. "Still outnumbered," General Park said. "But not outclassed," said Engineer Boram Yoon, speaking for the first time. She had been quietly sitting in the corner, but now everyone looked at her. "I've been working on something new. Quantum disruption torpedoes. They can phase through enemy shields." Admiral Lee raised his eyebrows. "Tested?" "In simulation only," Boram admitted. "But the theory is sound. We reverse engineered the technology from some old Earth archives. If it works, it could change everything." The room buzzed with excitement. New weapons technology was always interesting to military minds. Admiral Lee stood up and walked to the big window that looked out over Lake Geneva. The water was blue and peaceful, with white boats sailing back and forth. It reminded him of the home he was sworn to protect. "Sir?" Subin asked. "What are your orders?" Admiral Lee turned around to face his staff. These were good people, smart people, people who had dedicated their lives to protecting Earth and its colonies. But they were also careful people, trained to think about risks and consequences. Sometimes, though, you had to stop thinking and start doing what was right. "I've made my decision," Admiral Lee said. His voice was calm but firm. "We don't abandon people who need help. That's not who we are." He walked back to his chair and sat down. "Captain Nam, you have your fleet. Take every ship we can spare. Third Fleet, Home Guard, anything that can fight and reach Kepler 442b in time." Captain Nam smiled wide. "Yes, sir." "Dr. Yang, I want you to go with them. If we're going to make contact with a new species, I want our best xenobiologists there." "Of course, Admiral." "Engineer Yoon, how many of your new torpedoes can you have ready?" Boram thought quickly. "If I work around the clock, maybe 50. Do it. And I want you on the flagship to make sure they work properly." General Park looked worried. "Sir, are you sure about this? We could be starting a war." Admiral Lee looked at each person in the room. "General, the Kethmorans have been expanding their territory for years. They've wiped out 3 species that we know of. They enslave civilians and destroy worlds for their resources. Someone needs to stand up to them." "But why us?" Colonel Yun asked. "Because we can," Admiral Lee said simply. "Because we have ships and weapons and brave people willing to fight. And because a peaceful species asked for help and no one else answered." He stood up again. "Ladies and gentlemen, in 2 hours I want every available ship heading for Kepler 442b. This is not just about the Althari. This is about what kind of people we are. This is about whether we help the weak or let bullies destroy them." The room was completely quiet. Then Captain Nam spoke up. "Admiral, what should I tell the fleet about our mission?" Admiral Lee thought for a moment. "Tell them we're going to save people who can't save themselves. Tell them we're going to show the galaxy that humans don't let innocent beings die when we can prevent it. And tell them that when the Althari called for help and no one came, Earth answered." As the meeting broke up and people hurried to prepare the fleet, Admiral Lee stayed in the war room. He looked at the star map showing the long journey to Kepler 442b. It would be the largest fleet Earth had ever sent into combat. He thought about Captain Park, alone in his small ship, trying to help strangers against impossible odds. That young captain had made a choice that might change everything. He had decided that doing the right thing was more important than following orders. Now Earth would make the same choice. Within 2 hours, ships began launching from Earth's orbital shipyards. The mighty Indomitable led the way, followed by her sister ships Determination and Valiant. Behind them came cruisers, destroyers, frigates, and carriers full of fighter craft. It was the most powerful fleet in human history, racing across space to help people they had never met. The Catamaran war fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a storm cloud blocking the sun. 50 massive ships, each one black as night and covered with weapons, formed a line in front of the small planet Kepler 442b. The largest ship was 3 times bigger than anything the Althari had ever seen. Supreme General Thexvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominator. He was tall and strong, with gray skin and red eyes that glowed in the dark. Scars covered his arms and face, telling stories of many battles. He had conquered 12 worlds for the Kethmaran Empire and enslaved millions of beings. Today would be easy work. "Report," he said to his navigation officer. His voice was deep and harsh, like rocks grinding together. "The planet shows no military ships in orbit, General. Long-range scans detect several cities, but no weapons platforms or defense stations." Thexvar smiled, showing sharp teeth. "Perfect. These Althari are even weaker than our intelligence suggested." He walked to the communication station, opened a channel to the planet. Down on Kepler 442b, Elder Vostai sat in the underground command center of the main Althari city. Around him, his people worked at computers and communication panels. Their large eyes were wide with fear, and their pale green skin had turned almost white. The main screen lit up with the face of Supreme General Thexvar. His red eyes seemed to look right through the camera. "I am Supreme General Thexvar of the Kethmaran Empire. This world and everything on it now belongs to us. You have 1 hour to surrender completely. Open your cities, give us access to your mining facilities, and submit to Imperial rule. Your people will work in our mines until they die." Elder Vostai stood slowly. He was old and tired, but his voice was steady when he spoke. "General Thexvar, we are a peaceful people. We have done nothing to harm your empire. This world is our home." Thexvar laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You exist and you control resources we want. That is harm enough. You have 1 hour." The screen went black. Vostai looked around at his people. Scientists, teachers, artists, farmers. All of them afraid, but none of them willing to become slaves. A young Althari named Miradan stepped forward. She was their best scientist, brilliant with computers and energy systems. "Elder," she said softly, "our shields can protect the underground cities for a while, but we have no weapons, no way to fight back. How long can we hold out?" Vostai asked. Miradan checked her computers. "If they use orbital bombardment, maybe 2 days. If they land ground forces, less." Far above them in space near the planet's small moon, Captain Yunwoo Park watched the Kethmaran fleet through his ship's sensors. The Meridian was hidden behind a large asteroid, but Park could see everything that was happening. "Captain," said Lieutenant Dayun Kim, "I'm picking up transmissions from the Kethmaran fleet. They're demanding surrender." "Any word from Earth?" Park asked. Dayun shook her head. "Nothing yet, sir." Chief Engineer Boram Yoon looked up from her station. "Captain, I've been thinking. The Meridian isn't a warship, but we do have some advantages. We're fast, we're quiet, and they don't know we're here." Security Chief Taemin Jung nodded. "Hit-and-run tactics. Strike their smaller ships and disappear before they can respond." Park looked at his crew. They were brave people, but they were only 5 humans against an entire fleet. Still, they had to try something. "What do you have in mind?" he asked. Taemin brought up a tactical display. "The Kethmorans have patrol ships spread out around the planet. Small corvettes, only lightly armed. If we can take out a few of them, it might buy the Althari more time. And get us killed in the process," said Medical Officer So Young Lim. But she was smiling when she said it. "I'm in." Park made his decision. "All right. We can't beat them, but we can hurt them. Taemin, plot a course to the nearest patrol ship. Boram, give me everything the engines have got." The Meridian came out from behind the asteroid like an angry wasp. It was small compared to the Kethmoran ships, but it moved fast and struck hard. Park's first target was a corvette patrolling the outer edge of the system. The attack was over in seconds. The Meridian fired everything it had, energy beams and missiles, then disappeared back into the asteroid field before the enemy could react. Behind them, the Kethmaran corvette exploded in bright fire. "One down," said Taemin with satisfaction. On the Dominator, Supreme General Thexvar stared at his tactical display in confusion. One of his ships had just been destroyed by an unknown attacker. Where did that come from? He demanded. His sensor officer worked frantically at his controls. Unknown, General. A small ship, very fast. It's gone now. Find it, HFY shouted. And destroy it. But the Meridian was already moving to its next target. Park used every trick he had learned in his years of space exploration. He hid behind moons and asteroids, used the planet's magnetic field to block sensors, and struck without warning. Over the next 6 hours, they destroyed 3 more Kethmoran ships and damaged 2 others. Each attack was perfect, fast, precise, and deadly. But Park knew they couldn't keep it up forever. Captain, said Dayun, the Kethmorans are starting their attack on the planet. On the main screen, they watched as the enemy fleet began firing energy beams down at the planet's surface. The beams were bright red and turned everything they touched into melted glass. The Althari cities were underground, protected by energy shields, but those shields wouldn't last forever. Down in the command center, Elder Vostai watched his world burn. The shields were holding, but barely. Every few minutes, the entire city shook as another energy beam struck. Elder, said Mirrodin, shield strength is down to 60%. At this rate, we have maybe 12 hours. Vostai closed his eyes. In 12 hours, his people would be dead or enslaved. All because they had the bad luck to live on a world with valuable minerals. Sir, said their communications officer, I'm getting a message from that Earthship. The screen lit up with Captain Park's face. He looked tired but determined. Elder Vostai, this is Captain Park of the Earth vessel Meridian. We're doing everything we can to help, but we need you to hold on. Help is coming. How do you know? Vostai asked. Because humans don't abandon people who need help. Park said simply. My people are coming. I promise you that. As if his words had power, long-range sensors suddenly detected something amazing. Dayun's voice was full of excitement as she reported to Captain Park. Sir, multiple hyperspace signatures at the edge of the system. Big ones, really big ones. Park felt his heart leap. How many? I'm counting. 60, 80. Over 100 ships, sir. It's the biggest fleet I've ever seen. In the Althari command center, the same sensors were picking up the new arrivals. Mirrodin stared at her screen in amazement. Elder, she whispered. Something's coming. Something huge. On the Dominator, Supreme General Thexvar watched his own sensors with growing alarm. Where there had been empty space moments before, a massive fleet was now forming up in battle order. Identification, he shouted. His communications officer looked pale. Sir, they're human ships. Earth vessels. I'm counting over 200 ships, including some of the largest vessels our sensors have ever detected. Thexvar felt a chill run down his spine. He had never heard of humans being this organized or this powerful. Where had this fleet come from? The answer came immediately as a signal reached every ship in the system. The voice was calm but hard as steel. This is Fleet Admiral Jin Ho Lee of the Terran Defense Force. You are attacking innocent beings under our protection. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Supreme General Thexvar looked at the tactical display showing the human fleet. His 50 ships against their 200. For the first time in his military career, he was outnumbered, but he was Kethmoran. He did not retreat. All ships, he ordered, prepare for battle. Today we show these humans what happens when they interfere with the Empire. The stage was set for the largest space battle anyone had ever seen. On one side, the cruel Kethmoran Empire that had conquered 12 worlds. On the other, the human fleet that had traveled across the galaxy to help strangers. And in between, on a small planet with blue trees and purple grass, the Althari waited to see who would decide their fate. The human fleet spread across space like a wall of metal and fire. At the center flew the massive dreadnought Determination, flagship of Fleet Admiral Jin Ho Lee. To her left and right, the sister ships Indomitable and Valiant took position, their weapons already charging for battle. Captain Hyejin Nam stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the enemy fleet through the main view screen. She was young for such responsibility, but her crew trusted her completely. They had trained together for 3 years, and they moved like one person with many hands. Enemy fleet is holding position, reported her tactical officer. 53 ships total, sir. Mostly cruisers and destroyers, but their flagship is massive. Captain Nam smiled coldly. Size isn't everything. What's the status on our new toys? Engineer Boram Yoon looked up from her station where she was making final checks on the quantum disruption torpedoes. All 50 weapons are loaded and ready, Captain. If these work like the simulations say they will, we're going to surprise some people today. On the flagship Determination, Admiral Lee studied the tactical display with his senior officers. The Kethmoran fleet was strong, but they were outnumbered almost 4-1. Still, Lee had not gotten this far by underestimating his enemies. Analysis? He asked Chief Strategy Officer Subin Choi. The Kethmorans are positioning for a defensive battle, Subin reported. They're using the planet's gravity well to anchor their formation. Smart. It limits our ability to maneuver around them. Dr. Min Su Yang, who had insisted on coming to witness first contact with the Althari, looked worried. Admiral, the planet's surface is still under bombardment. The Althari shields won't last much longer. Then we'd better end this quickly, Admiral Lee said. He opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships, this is Admiral Lee. Today we fight not for territory or resources, but for the simple right of innocent people to live in peace. Show them what humans do when faced with bullies. The response came from every ship at once, hundreds of voices shouting, "Yes, sir," with such force that it seemed to shake space itself. On the planet below, Elder Vosti and his people watched the fleets prepare for battle. The Althari had never seen anything like it. So many ships, so much power focused in one place. The very air seemed to crackle with energy. "Miraden," Vosti said to his chief scientist, "can our sensors tell who's winning?" The young Althari worked at her controls, her large eyes reflecting the lights of her displays. "The human fleet is much larger, Elder, but the Kethmorans have bigger individual ships. It's hard to say." Captain Hyunwoo Park, still hiding in the asteroid field with his small ship Meridian, had the best view of anyone. His communications officer Da-eun Kim was recording everything for history. "This is incredible," she whispered. "Humans came all this way just to help people they've never met." "That's what we do," Park said quietly. "That's what makes us human." The battle began when Supreme General Thexvar, angry and proud, fired the first shot. A massive energy beam lanced out from the Dominator toward the human flagship. But Admiral Lee had been expecting that. "All ships engage," he ordered. Space exploded into light and fire as 200 human ships opened fire at once. Energy beams, missiles, and plasma cannons lit up the darkness. The Kethmoran ships responded with their own weapons, and the space between the fleets became a storm of deadly energy. Captain Nam on the Indomitable led the first attack wave. Her ship dove toward the enemy line, dodging energy beams that could cut through mountains. Behind her came a squadron of destroyers and cruisers, all firing as fast as their weapons could charge. "First target is that heavy cruiser on the left," she ordered. "Let's see if our new weapons work." The Indomitable fired its first quantum disruption torpedo. The weapon looked like a normal missile at first, but as it approached the Kethmoran cruiser, something amazing happened. The torpedo passed right through the enemy's shields like they weren't even there. The explosion tore the cruiser apart from the inside. "Direct hit," shouted Nam's tactical officer. The torpedo went right through their shields. On the Dominator, Supreme General Thexvar watched one of his best ships die and felt real fear for the first time. "How did they do that?" "Unknown, sir," his science officer reported. "Their weapons somehow bypassed our shield grid completely." As the battle raged, more human ships launched quantum disruption torpedoes. Each one found its target, passing through Kethmoran's shields like they were made of air. In the first 10 minutes of fighting, 12 enemy ships were destroyed. But the Kethmorans were not helpless. Their ships were tough and their weapons were powerful. The human destroyer Thunder took a direct hit and exploded in a ball of fire. The cruiser Defiant lost its engines and drifted helplessly until a Kethmoran ship finished it off. Captain Donghyun Seo, commanding the carrier Valiant, launched his fighter squadrons to attack the smaller enemy ships. The pilots were young and brave, flying their small craft between the giant warships like birds attacking dragons. "This is Gold Squadron Leader," came a voice over the radio. "Beginning attack run on enemy destroyers." The fighters moved in perfect formation, their energy weapons carving bright lines through space. They were too small and fast for the big ships to hit easily, and they swarmed around the Kethmoran vessels like angry bees. On the planet's surface, the bombardment had stopped as the Kethmoran ships focused on the battle above. Elder Vossitai and his people watched the lights in the sky, knowing their fate was being decided among the stars. "The humans are winning," Miraden reported, studying her sensors. "They've destroyed 20 enemy ships and only lost 5 of their own." But Supreme General Thexvar was not finished. He had one more card to play. All ships concentrate fire on the human flagship. If we kill their admiral, they'll fall apart. The remaining Kethmaran ships turned all their weapons toward the Determination. Energy beams and missiles filled space, all aimed at Admiral Lee's ship. The flagship's shields flared bright as they absorbed the terrible punishment. "Shields down to 40%, reported the Determination's defensive officer. Admiral Lee remained calm. "Return fire. Target their flagship." But as the human ships moved to protect their admiral, a small squadron of Kethmaran fighters broke through the defensive line. They were heading straight for the Determination, carrying powerful bombs that could crack even a dreadnought's armor. Lieutenant Sulky Park, flying a fighter from the carrier Courageous, saw the enemy bombers approaching. She was Captain Park's younger sister, just as brave as her brother but twice as reckless. "This is Lieutenant Park," she said over the radio. "I'm going after those bombers." "Selkie, no," came her squadron leader's voice. "There are too many of them." But she was already moving, her fighter diving toward the enemy formation. Her wingmen followed her, and together they attacked the Kethmaran bombers head-on. The dogfight was fierce and desperate. Energy beams crossed space like deadly lightning. One by one, the bombers fell to Sulky's guns. But there were more of them, and her fighter was taking damage. "My shields are down," she reported, her voice still steady despite the danger. "But I can get the last two." "Pull back," her squadron leader ordered. "That's an order." "Sorry, sir," Sulky said with a smile in her voice. "I can't hear you over the sound of me saving the flagship." She aimed her damaged fighter directly at the last bomber and fired everything she had. Both ships exploded in a ball of fire that lit up space like a new star. The explosion saved the Determination, but it cost the life of one of humanity's bravest pilots. Captain Hyunwoo Park, watching from his hiding place, saw his sister's fighter disappear in the explosion. For a moment he couldn't breathe, then anger filled him, cold and pure. "Dayun," he said quietly, "plot a course for the enemy flagship." "Sir?" she asked, confused. "The Kethmarans want to play rough," Park said. "Let's show them what happens when they kill our family." The small ship Meridian came out of the asteroid field one last time, but this time it wasn't running. It was flying straight toward the massive Dominator, all weapons firing. The battle for Kepler 442b had become personal. Captain Hyunwoo Park's small ship Meridian raced toward the massive enemy flagship like a bullet aimed at a giant's heart. The Dominator was 50 times larger than his little exploration vessel, but Park no longer cared about the odds. His sister was dead, and someone was going to pay. "Captain, we're taking heavy fire," shouted Security Chief Taemin Young as energy beams flashed past their ship. "Keep us steady," Park ordered, his voice cold as space. "I want a clean shot at their bridge." On the Dominator's bridge, Supreme, General Thexvar watched the tiny human ship approach with something like admiration. "That pilot has courage, I'll give him that. But courage won't save him." The flagship's defensive guns turned toward the Meridian, filling space with deadly fire. But Captain Park had learned every trick of space combat in his years as an explorer. He rolled and twisted his ship between the energy beams, using every bit of skill he had. "Almost there," said Lieutenant Dayun Kim, working her controls frantically. "Firing solution locked." The Meridian fired everything it had directly at the Dominator's bridge. The small ship's weapons couldn't penetrate the flagship's heavy armor, but they didn't need to. The attack was just a distraction. While Thexvar's attention was focused on the brave little ship, Admiral Lee was putting his real plan into action. He had used the time to position his fleet perfectly, surrounding the remaining Kethmaran ships in a deadly trap. "All ships, execute formation hammer and anvil," Lee ordered. The human fleet moved like a machine, each ship knowing exactly where to go. Captain Nam's Indomitable led one group in a flanking attack, while Captain Seo's Valiant moved to block the enemy's escape route. The carrier, Courageous, launched its remaining fighters to finish off damaged enemy ships. Engineer Boram Yoon, working frantically on the flagship, had managed to modify the quantum disruption torpedo technology. "Admiral, I've created a ship-killer version. It should be able to destabilize their main reactor." "Do it," Lee ordered. The new super torpedo launched from the Determination, its target the enemy flagship. Unlike the smaller versions, this weapon was the size of a small ship itself. packed with enough quantum disruption energy to tear apart a moon. Supreme General Thexavar saw the massive torpedo coming and realized his mistake. He had focused on the small ship when he should have been watching for the real threat. "All power to shields," he shouted. "Brace for impact." But no amount of shielding could stop Boram's new weapon. The torpedo passed through the Dominator's defenses like they were made of smoke, striking the ship's reactor core directly. The explosion was incredible. The massive flagship broke apart in a ball of fire that could be seen from the planet's surface. Supreme General Thexvar, the terror of 12 star systems, died without ever understanding how the humans had beaten him. With their leader dead and their flagship destroyed, the remaining Kethmoran ships lost all will to fight. Some tried to surrender, others attempted to flee. Captain Nam's task force hunted down the runners while Admiral Lee accepted the surrender of those who were smart enough to quit. In less than 2 hours, the most feared fleet in this part of the galaxy had been completely destroyed. On the planet, below, Elder Vossatai and his people watched the lights in the sky fade away. The bombardment had stopped and their sensors showed only human ships remaining in orbit. "Is it over?" asked Mirrodin, hardly daring to believe it. Before Vostai could answer, their communication system activated. The face on the screen was older and kind, with the calm confidence of someone used to command. "People of Kepler 442b, this is Fleet Admiral Jinho Lee of the Terran Defense Force. The threat to your world has been eliminated. You are safe." Elder Vostai stood slowly, his legs shaking from relief and exhaustion. "Admiral Lee, I am Elder Vostai of the Althari. We cannot thank you enough. You came when no one else would." "We came because it was the right thing to do," Admiral Lee said simply. "No one should face extinction alone." Over the next few days, human ships landed on Kepler 442b for the first time. Dr. Minsu Yang led the first contact team, amazed by what he found. The Althari were a peaceful, intelligent species with incredible knowledge of ecological science. Their cities were marvels of engineering that worked with nature instead of against it. "Admiral," Dr. Yang reported, "these people could teach us so much. Their environmental technology is centuries ahead of ours, and they're completely peaceful. They haven't fought a war in over 500 years." Meanwhile, Chief Diplomat Yoon Young, Quan worked with Elder Vostai to establish formal relations between Earth and the Althari. The alien leader was still amazed by what the humans had done. "You traveled across the galaxy to help strangers," he said during one of their meetings. "Your own Captain Park risked his life for people he had never met." "Why?" Yoon Young thought about that for a moment. "Because that's what good people do. We help when we can. We protect those who can't protect themselves. And we never let bullies win." The alliance they signed became the foundation for something much larger. Word of the human victory spread quickly through the galaxy. Other peaceful species, long oppressed by aggressive empires, began to look toward Earth as a beacon of hope. Captain Hyunwoo Park, promoted to admiral for his courage, was given command of the first joint human Althari research station. As he stood in the observation deck, watching ships from both species working together, he thought about his sister Sulki. Her sacrifice had saved the flagship and turned the tide of battle. More importantly, it had shown the galaxy what humans were willing to do for others. There was already talk of naming the new space station after her. Dr. Yang approached him, carrying a datapad full of exciting discoveries. "Admiral, you need to see this. The Althari have shared their terraforming technology with us. Combined with our quantum disruption systems, we could transform dead worlds into gardens." Park smiled, the first real smile he'd had since his sister's death. She would have liked that. Silky always said we should make things better, not just blow them up. 6 months later, the effects of the Battle of Kepler 442b were still spreading. 3 more species had joined the growing alliance between Earth and the Althari. The Kethmoran Empire, leaderless and broken, had lost half its territory to rebellions by former slave worlds. Most importantly, the galaxy had learned something new about humans. They weren't just another aggressive species looking to build an empire. They were something different. a people who grew stronger by protecting others instead of conquering them. In the rebuilt city on Kepler 442b, a monument stood in the central plaza. It was simple, just a crystal pillar with words written in both human and Elthari languages. They thought no one would come, but someone always comes when good people hear the call for help. Elder Vostai visited the monument every day, along with many of his people. They would stand quietly for a few minutes, remembering the dark time when death seemed certain and the moment when hope appeared in the form of human ships. The monument had another inscription, smaller but just as important. In memory of Lieutenant Selkie Park and all who gave their lives so others might live. Admiral Park visited that monument too, whenever his duties brought him to the planet. He would read his sister's name and remember her last words. "I can't hear you over the sound of me saving the flagship." She had been young and reckless and brave, everything that made humans special. She had died protecting people she'd never met, fighting for a cause she believed in completely. And because of her sacrifice and the sacrifice of others like her, the galaxy was becoming a better place. One where peaceful species could live without fear, where bullies faced consequences for their actions, and where no cry for help went unanswered. The Elthari had learned that humans were more than just another spacefaring race. They were protectors, defenders of the weak, a people who measured their strength not by what they could destroy, but by what they could save. And the humans had learned something too. They had discovered that they were not alone in wanting to do good. The galaxy was full of species like the Elthari, peaceful, intelligent, creative people who just wanted to live their lives in peace. Together, they were building something new, not an empire built on conquest and fear, but an alliance built on mutual respect and shared values. It was slow work, careful work, but it was good work. And it all started when a small survey ship received a cry for help. And a young captain decided that some things were more important than following orders. In the end, that's what the monument really celebrated. Not just the victory over the Kethmarans, but the simple human truth that when someone needs help, good people come running, even if they have to cross the galaxy to do it.